Good morning, everyone. I hope this finds you all well and safe. So this is our last session for this week, information session as part of the launch of the Ukraine Civil Society Facility call proposals. I see that more and more people are logging in. So I would just like to welcome you to this last session, to recall that basically throughout this week we have been going through a number of issues, starting with a general presentation of the call that would give you a bit of an understanding of what is our framework for engagement with civil society in Ukraine, why we designed and how did we design this call the way that we did. And basically, throughout the past 2 days, we have been conducting thematic information sessions on each of the lots that are made available for competition. And I trust that as many of you as possible have attended those thematic information sessions as well. If you are not able to do so, you may find the recordings online on the UProSteer website, Facebook page, YouTube channel, and soon on the Delegation website as well. Without further ado, today is about the technicality of the concept of proposal. As we've seen from your registration forms for all the sessions, there is a really staggering demand for you to understand how to apply for this call. Just to take it one by one, your starting point is always the application pack, the most important document. The guidelines for the call for proposals. You have a whole section in the guidelines that instructs you how to apply, including what are our IT systems and what are the requirements for your registration in these IT systems. But also moving forward to the application form Annex A1 that itself contains instructions as to what the content of the sections, the mandatory sections in the concept note may be. However, today is about how to design this content. Yeah, so we have here our colleague Yazenka Perovic, who has been working with us in Ukraine for the past 2 years to help us build capacities of civil society, but also has a very wide experience internationally, particularly in the Western Balkans, of helping civil society increase their profile and get a more prominent role on the national scene. She is here with us today to basically walk us through what are the main elements of a project proposal. Those of you who did attend the general information session and some of the thematic sessions, you may have heard me saying this over and over again. What we expect in the concept note is the quintessence of your project. It is an elevator pitch. It is you convincing us that it's worth that is worth for us to invite you to submit a full application. Therefore, as far as we are concerned, your project development does not start with the concept note, but ends with the concept note. Of course, at full application, you'll be fine-tuning, explaining where you're coming, from where you're coming with all of this. However, it needs to come out very clearly in the concept notes that you have a clear understanding of what your project is about, what do you intend to do, and very, very specifically, what you are going to do, that you need to fill in the description of the action, and why is this relevant. So again, I would like to make the emphasis on the section referring to relevance, where you need to explain why the action that you are proposing is relevant for the problems that you have identified, but also for the priorities of the call, first of all, and then of the lot within which you apply. So please be very careful which lot you select. Make sure it is the correct one. Anything from trying to apply to multiple lots with the same proposal, to accidentally selecting in prospect the wrong lot can actually lead to a disqualification. We expect a very high number of applications, so you need to start early with registering in the IT systems. make sure you don't leave this for the last days where you may be, stressed and prone to make, very simple mistakes, because we will need to be very, very strict on implementing these rules in order to focus on the proposals that will need to be evaluated. So on that note, I will be here throughout the session, and we'll step back in during the Q&A session at the end. But now for about 60 to 90 minutes, Yasenka will lead you through this initial training on concept note preparation. I wish you all a very good and informative session. Yasenka?
Okay, thank you, Susanna, very much for the kind words. Welcome, participants. I see we have a 78 and the number is increasing. So it's a quite audience today, and I'm so happy that we have such a wide outreach. Hopefully, I will really manage to guide you today through the process of developing your concept note, and I will really try to share my all knowledge and experience I may have with you. So we will start, what are the objectives of this session today, and what we would like to help you with, actually. So hopefully by the end of the session, you will really understand the contents of the Annex A1. You will receive a guidelines for go, no-go criteria. You will receive tips on how to improve your writing processes, be able to analyze EU priorities, match your concept note with the EU financing priorities, receive tips on how to create logical structure of your concept note and the future intervention and project proposal, receive some tips on how to write successful and convincing concept note, and understand the evaluation procedure and assessment criteria of your concept note. So I think there is plenty to be discussed. Hopefully by the end of this session, the impact will be that you will really feel more confident in writing the concept note and really enjoy it. So whatever we go through today, hopefully it will be useful for you for any next EU call that can come up in the future. Basically, since Jana mentioned today's presentation, I intended to spend full hour or perhaps even hour and a half guiding you through all different aspects that perhaps you should be careful about, take into consideration, think about. So the whole presentation of today has 4 main sections. The first one, we will just go back quickly to the guidelines for applicants, only to the part related for the concept note, just to repeat and to understand where you can find this information and what is important. Then hopefully we will help you how to decide if your organization is ready to really proceed with this call for proposal. Then how to develop the content for the concept note. As since Jana mentioned, this is the core of today's presentation. So this is the major part. And then at the end, how will you be assessed? If we have time, we will try to answer to some of your questions that we received during your online presentation. But also if you get inspired with some of the information that I'll be sharing with you, you are more than welcome to send your questions in the chat, and my colleagues will share it with me as well, because I'm a co-host today, so I'm not going to be able to see your questions directly, but my colleagues will, and they'll pass me your questions by the end of my presentation. Okay, because for me, it is difficult to assess the structure of the audience today. So some of you may be quite experienced with applying to the EU grant so far. Some of them are really novice in this process, but for the joint understanding, I would like to share with you what basically the definition of the grant is. Grant is a direct payment for the action of the non-commercial nature that the contracting authority provides to a specific beneficiary to implement an action in order to promote an objective of organization or any project or the program. So I think this is quite self-explanatory. Just briefly to go through the guidelines for applications. So basically, here at the first, screen, you can see I've shared with you the link. If you go to this link, you will be able to see what. Actually, I'll try to share with you what is on the link. Hold on for a second. Okay, so I'm not sure if you. Yeah. So what you are able to see here is. The full application, which is basically, it gives you the overview of all annexes that come with the guidelines for applicants. Okay, so most probably all of them will be of interest for you, but for the moment and for today's discussions, we will be referring to the grant application form, which is the concept note, and the Annex A1. This is really the concept note, and this is something that you will have to fill in and submit as a concept note. And I would also refer you to the elements of the logical framework, which you don't need to submit with this concept note. But as Cinziana said, the concept note is not the beginning of designing your action, but it is the end. And the logical framework is a really useful tool for you to design your action and your future proposal. So this is why it is important for today's session. Okay, so I will just go back now to the presentation where we stopped. Okay. For a second, it's difficult to kind of manage between different screens. So really, I hope you have patience with me, because I really want to show you everything that could be of concern for you. So as you were able to learn through our sessions, which we had for the past 3 days, and you were able to read in the guidelines for applicants, it has several chapters. Which first one is objectives and priorities, then eligibility criteria, then also there are parts dealing with the evaluation criteria, contracting award procedure, rules for implementation, and then the grant application form, meaning the concept note. As it was mentioned before, this is restrictive call for proposal, which means that it has a few steps throughout the process of evaluation of your proposal. The very first one, which is the subject of today's discussion, is the concept note, which has again subsection or sub-steps. First one is the opening and administrative checks, and then the second one is the concept note evaluation. This one is quite important because it really is the ticket for the next step for you, and this is why perhaps you should really pay a lot of attention in how you write and how you present your future proposal, or how, as Diana said, how you pitch your project idea. If you pass the concept note, then you will go to the evaluation of the full proposal, and then the third step is a verification of eligibility of the applicants and affiliated entities. So how to apply? Section 2.2 of the guidelines tells you and provides you this information. Basically, as mentioned before, you have to register in PADR for the concept note. The lead applicant has to be registered, and it's for all contributions that are more than 60,000 euros. If we go to the guidelines for applicants, you will see that for all lots, the minimum amount is much more than 60,000. Therefore, you have to register in PADR. Also, in this Section 2.2, you have the information that basically the concept note has to be submitted through Prospect, which is the online platform. It provides you and it gives you the link for the prospect, and also so the Annex 1 together with declaration has to be submitted here. Upon submission, the lead applicant will receive the automatic reply on its prospect profile, and also and you are also advised, and we will go through this later on throughout the presentation, that really go through the checklists of the checklist of the Annex 1, and then see if you have managed to complete everything that is required for the concept note prior to submitting it. The deadline is the August 14 at 15 Brussels time. On the cover page of the guidelines to applicants, and then also on the cover page of the Annex A1, it is also indicated that is a 16 o'clock or 4 p.m. of Kiev time. Please again be reminded not to wait the last moment to submit your concept note, because you can be faced with the heavy internet traffic, and therefore you can be late. If you are late, you will be automatically rejected, and the contracting authority will not be held accountable in this regard. So during the opening, so once the contracting authority receives your concept note and they start with the assessment evaluation, the first they will start with the opening and an administrative check, where they will see, first of all, if you respect the deadline, have you fulfilled everything from the checklists, is your action eligible, are there any information that are missing or are incorrect, and if anything of all of this is missing, then you will be most probably rejected, and then your concept note will not be evaluated. If you pass this opening and administrative check, then your concept note will go through the evaluation procedure. The maximum points you can receive is the 50 points, and again we will go through the evaluation criteria later on. And also during the evaluation, assessors and evaluators, they will see if your concept note really complies with the instructions provided within the concept note, or have you really included all elements and information that need to be included. And we will investigate this further throughout the presentation. Once the concept notes have been assessed, those that have more than 30 points, they will be taken into consideration for the further evaluation, and the contracting authority usually, depending on the volume of the submitted concept notes, they try to create the list of the concept notes that will have in terms of the financial value, 200% of the overall budget available. Okay, so and then a lead applicant will automatically receive through the prospect on its profile that the concept note has passed, and you will be invited to submit the full application. Okay, so this was a brief I would say reminder of all of us where you can find information in the guidelines and what you should keep in mind when preparing to develop your concept note, and also when submitting your concept note at the end. Before we go really in developing the content of the concept note, what I would like to also perhaps share some of the tips or ideas that could be of help to you is how you decide as an organization, do you really proceed with this call for proposal? Because at this stage, it is quite inviting, the financial envelopes are quite high, but still there are some things perhaps that you can, self-assess, should you really proceed or not. One of the useful tools that can help you is this mind mapping, and I'm not sure if you are familiar with this tool. I'm sure you are, but basically it can help you to really try to visualize after you read the guidelines for applicants, after you attended our information session, the thematic sessions. We believe that perhaps already you have some ideas or where your intervention can go or where your whole project can go, and basically you can try to sketch it in a form of this mind map. It can help you to communicate your idea with your teammates, with your co-applicants perhaps, and other stakeholders in the sector. It can help you to motivate yourself, and the thing is that this mind map should really be creative and personal. Also in this presentation, I try to share with you some of the tips how to create it. Basically, you put your main project idea in the center. You try to orient your paper. You can use the flip chart paper in the landscape form. You take, of course, blank paper, and then you start from the center. Then the idea when you are developing a mind map is really to use the images, color, words, not to use the paragraphs. So you can use the single word, keyword, and so on. The lines are also very important because this mind map should develop organically, and there is nothing, you cannot go wrong. So you are just trying to create and build your idea. This is like a sketch of the potential project. Of course, those that are coming from the center are, you know, thicker. If you are progressing towards the periphery, then it goes thinner, but each of them, they have to link to each other. Try to be really to make it personal, beautiful, clear. Use the association. As I said, this could be a useful tool for you to communicate your project idea or to understand from where you want to start or where you want to go initially. Once you have, I would say, the initial project idea, then you can go again and look through these criteria and see if this is something that can help you in assessing whether or not you should proceed with this call for proposal. First of all, you have to try to think of, you know, what are the chances to be awarded with this call? What is your competition? Because we are all sure that, you know who your sector mates are, who your competitors are, what the potential ideas are. Then, do you have enough time and staff available to prepare the solid proposal? How much EU, do they know you? How familiar they are with your work and your profile of the organization? Can this project be financially feasible for you? Okay. What is your absorption capacity or the workload? Do you have any other projects running at the time? And can you deal with this project at the same time? Or basically, you can think of what you have also planned in the next 2 years, in addition to this call for proposal, or in addition to the current projects that you are implementing. Does the initial, the sketched project idea really belongs to your core operation? Is it sufficiently innovative? Does it support your further staff development? Is it important for your local, regional, global presence? Do you have a stable cash flow in addition to this potential grant? Because not all of your expenses will be covered with this grant. So you have to have some additional financial resources in order for your organization to be operational. Then also you can look internally based on the initial idea that you had in mind. Okay, what is the qualification of your staff? Do you have enough experience, expertise? Do you have to look for experts outside of your project? Who are your potential partners, co-applicants? What is your own added value? How you complement to each other? What are the elements you want? All of this, for example, network or potential or consortium partner, it will help you when you negotiate partnership with your co-applicants, so that you really have, and you start from, you protect the interest of your organization, you know what you are willing to give up in this give in this partnership, and how do you negotiate that, as I've said.
So much, Faka.
Excuse me. We have somebody who is whose microphone is also on. Okay. So now we finished this part that was related to criteria that can help you to decide whether or not you would like to proceed with the call for proposal. Are you ready? Now we can move to this next part, which I mentioned that this is a core element of this presentation. And this is how to develop the content of the concept note. Okay, so some of these bullet points are already mentioned either through the first segment of this presentation when we were discussing the guidelines for applicants or with this go or no go criteria. But I would like to draw your attention to the last bullet point, which is distill questions for clarification. As you know, and it's written in the guidelines, you have the opportunity to ask questions. You had the opportunity to ask questions for these previous sessions, and my colleague Tiziana also invited you and mentioned that you should really, the questions that you ask us, you should formally submit to the delegation on the email address available in the guidelines. The deadline for submission of the questions is a 21 day prior to the deadline for submission of the concept note. And please, and the answers will be provided to all questions that are raised, and really pay attention to these answers. So it will be available to all of you, because some of the questions can really help you in sorting out some of your dilemmas. Maybe can open some new perspectives while you are preparing your concept note and thinking about the future project proposal. So don't ignore it and really pay attention to this. Starting point, and I think that the thematic sessions were really helpful yesterday and the day before yesterday, is really for you to understand what are the EU funding priorities. So what is the result chain they want to achieve? Also, as mentioned before, the starting point for you is to really investigate the Annex A1. And I will just switch from the PowerPoint presentation and I'll share with you this document. Okay. I think you can all see. So it can be downloaded from the link I've shared with you previously. And if you go through the Annex A1, as I mentioned before, on a very first page, the deadline for your application is written here. So it's the August 14/20 Kiev time, 16 o'clock. You have to fill in this table. So you write the number and title of the lot, title of the action, name of the lead applicant, nationality of the lead applicant. This dossier number is for official use. Then basically do not forget to fill out this table, which is 1.1.1, but my advice for you would be to fill it once you finish writing the concept note. Okay, then if you scroll further, you will see that the concept note itself has two main chapters, which is 1.2, description of the action, and it should be maximum 2 pages, and please pay attention to this. The next chapter is the relevance of the action, which can be a maximum of 3 pages, and it has several subheadings. Please do not erase these subheadings, so they have to be here. You should maintain them. The second section of the Annex A1 is a declaration that needs to be signed by the lead applicant. Please do not forget to fill in your name, signature, your position, and date. As you see here, information that is related to the instruction for drafting the concept note should be deleted once you write the concept note, fill in the declaration, and fill in the cover page. But for today's session, it is really important because it gives us a guidelines to understand what you need to take into consideration and think about before you start writing your concept note and developing. So even here you see the third bullet point, it says that it has to be in an Arial 10 size font. So sometimes because you have a more text and you try to fit in 2 pages or 3 pages, then there is tendency for the applicant to reduce the font size, or maybe to stretch or make margins smaller than 2 centimeters. Please obey to these rule and technicalities here. Also, when you go under each of these subheadings, please pay attention to each of the small bullet points, because it gives you and it guides you through the process what you need to include. Okay, so you give the background of the preparation of the action, explain on the objectives of the action, describe the key stakeholder groups and their attitudes, briefly outline intervention logic underpinning the action, briefly outline type of the activities, explain how the action will mainstream relevant cross-cutting issues such as promotion of human rights. But in addition to those that are written here, also pay attention to the cross-cutting issues indicated in the guidelines for applicants, because it is written what you need to address as well. The same is for the relevance of the action, maximum again 3 pages, but every subheading gives you idea okay, what should be included in each of these subheadings. For example, 1.3.1, relevance of the objective, sector, theme, specific priorities. You have to describe the relevance of the actions to the objectives and priorities of the call for proposal. So you have to link it. It has to you have to show clear linkages to the objectives and priorities of the call for proposal. You have to describe the relevance of the action to any specific sub-theme, sectors, area. Describe which of the expected results referred to in the guidelines will be addressed by your intervention. Then 1.3.2, same, you have plenty of things, but one, for example, here important for our today's discussion, that you have to provide detailed analysis of the problem, refer to any significant plans undertaken in national, regional, so you have to link it with the sectoral strategic documents or aspirations in the country. And our colleagues from delegation shared with you plenty of the information per each of the particular sector. They gave you information, how is it related to the certain strategy, policies, and so on. If your action is continuation from the previous action, you have to show some linkages. If it is part of the larger program, again, clearly explain how is it part of this larger program. Explain the complementarity with other initiatives supported by the EU, and so on. The 1.3.3 again is really focusing on the target groups and the final beneficiary. And here you have to show how your project idea really will benefit or contribute to the target group and beneficiaries. Again, plenty of things to keep in mind, and please do not neglect any of these bullet points. 1.3.4 is a particular added value elements. Think of your project idea and really try to think of, okay, what is the value added element we are really bringing with this? Is it the public-private partnership? Is it some kind of the innovation? Is it the best practices? You name it. And then in 1.4, it's information about the lead applicants and co-applicants. One also thing we have been mentioning a few times today and in the days before is this a checklist. So it is important for the very first step of the concept note evaluation, which is the assessment, the administrative check. And here it is used for your self-assessment, okay, but really try to go through each of these items and mark yes for yourself if you comply with all of these rules. If, for example, for some of the elements, it was not required by this call for proposal, or it's not written in the guidelines for the applicants, you write like a not applicable n/A. Okay. Of course, this part and the instruction, as it is written here with the red font, it should be deleted once you once you finished writing your concept note and once you are ready to submit the concept note via prospect. In the guidelines of applicants, again, I want to just briefly acquaint you with the evaluation criteria, because it really gives you idea what you should take into account when you start designing your concept note. Okay, so very first part is related to relevance of your action, and each of these, how relevant is your proposal to the objectives and priorities of the guidelines? How relevant is the proposal to particular needs and constraints of the target countries, regions, and so on? How clearly defined and strategically chosen are those involved in your proposal? Does the proposal contain particular added value elements? And I've just showed you where are you writing about these value added elements in the concept note. And then the second part is the design of the action. How coherent is the overall design of the action? Does the design reflect a robust analysis of the problems involved? Does the design take into account external factors? Are the activities feasible and consistent in relation to the expected results? To which extent does the proposal integrate relevant cross-cutting elements? So you see, everything that is asked, that you were asked to provide information in the concept note now will be really evaluated once your concept note is on the table on the European Union evaluators and assessors. So, and once you finish writing your concept note, it would be good for you to really cross-examine your concept note against these criteria for the evaluation. Why I was sharing, and maybe which is quite, for some of you this is quite obvious, but this really gave us a hint what you should start thinking about prior to writing the concept note. So, okay, so we had the problem analysis, we had the stakeholders, how related it is to the country needs or the region needs, and so on. So I will just again go back to the presentation from here. So yes, I think that we exhausted now, and at least you know where you can find the Annex A1, and you know what are the elements of the Annex A1. Also, I hope it is now more clear for you where you can find the instructions, what you need to read or write under each of these headings and subheadings of the Annex A1. Results chain. This is sometimes, before we go into this particular slide, I want you again just to draw your attention, because often practice is that the organization, they will just jump into writing the concept note. And this is a practice which I would strongly discourage you to do. So really, I would encourage you to go through the next steps that I will show you, because then I believe that you will be able to formulate your project idea much better and to structure it and to write a much more convincing concept note than if you would go and just start writing and filling in the elements of the concept note. So the results chain, this is a terminology that is associated to the logical framework. I also referred you at the beginning of the session, which is one of the annexes of the call for proposal. And the whole Logframe is based on this logic. So you start with some inputs. Inputs help you with the activities. Activities bring some outputs. Then outputs lead to the outcomes, and outcomes lead to the impact. So there is some logic connection between all of them. At the level of the outcome and the impact, this is where real change is happening. Where change takes place. So this is important to understand. You as the organization who is to implement one project, once you define your logical framework, or you cannot control everything, but if you design your project idea properly, then the outputs are really your sphere of control. So the deliverables or the outputs are, I would say, synonyms. Outcomes is something that will be used because of your intervention, and this is your sphere of influence. So this is where you really want to contribute to the change. And then the impact, it is really at the level of society, and this is your sphere of concern, because all of these interventions, the project proposals that you are to propose, basically they are somehow you want to influence something, and you want to make Ukrainian society better. So this is why it is important to understand how one leads to the other. When you are defining outputs, basically some of the questions that you can ask yourself: okay, what are the services you are delivering, or you are producing, and they should be described in the measurable terms. At the level of the outcome, then you are asking yourself, okay, what is the change, or what are the changes at the target group level you are looking for? So these are the outcomes. Again, it would be important if you describe them in a measurable terms. At the impact level, okay, what are the long-term, large-scale changes you are ultimately interested in and contributing to the impact? Again, try to have it in measurable terms. And we will, throughout the next slides, we will also come up with this: how do you define in a measurable terms? So result chain explained. This is just a different way of presenting what I was telling you about the result chain so far. So activities, this is ongoing. Level of the output is a short term. Outcome is a medium term, and impact is a long term of your project. Okay. So some of you ask yourself perhaps, okay, so how do I link my project really to the call for proposal or the guidelines for the applicants? So guidelines for the applicants or call for proposal can be perceived as perhaps one whole program, and the program has the overall objective which is written, then there are program purposes, outcomes, or sometimes they are defined as a specific objectives. Then the next level is the program results or the outputs, and then program activities. In the guidelines for applicants, you have all of these elements clearly written and defined. So your project, when you are developing your project, you are linking it, but one level lower, if we can say. So whatever is the program purpose for the call for proposal, it will become your overall objective. Then the program results, they become the project purpose or the outcome. Program activities, they become the project results, and the outputs and activities are, okay, you define them activities as you wish. Then we have the sub-projects. It's the same logic, but one level lower. We won't have the sub-projects at this stage. I think this is the linkage for you that you should somehow try to establish at the beginning of developing your concept note. How it would look like. So the overall objective of this call for proposal is to promote the role of capacities of civil society, including cultural operation in promoting better governance, human rights, and cultural development in Ukraine. Then as the outcomes or specific objectives, you have 7 lots. Then the outputs, you have the indicative priorities per lot, and then you have actions. Okay, then for your proposal, your impact will be linked to the specific objectives or the outcomes of these 7 lots. So you choose one particular lot. Then outcomes of your projects, will be actually outputs that are listed in the call for proposal under each of the lots as indicative priorities, and actions of the call, they will become your desires. Some of them, of course, not all of them, but some of them, they'll become your outputs. And then you have in the guidelines written eligible activities, and you try to formulate your activities in accordance to the list that is provided in the guidelines. How do we start? Okay. So definitions, so logical framework, it's a set of related concepts describing the intervention in operational terms in a given form. Intervention, it's a general term for project and program. Again, to clarify some of the terms I've been using, so not to confuse you, okay? Sometimes I say the intervention, sometimes the project, so, but these are some of the synonyms, and I think that this list of the, definitions also helps you. A logical framework has 4 columns and several rows. And of course, for you to fill in all of them, you can not just sit with the logical framework template and start filling in. So you have to have some activities, to take place prior to developing the logical framework. And they are referred, okay, just one second, I will come back to this slide. They are confirmed as the analysis phase and the planning phase, okay? And we will go through the steps of the analysis. But also as written here on these slides, and also as I was using different terminology, again, to clarify among all of us, impact often is referred as the overall goal or overall objective, long-term objective, development objective, and so on. Then outcome can be effect, goal, project. All of this that is listed here are synonyms, outputs as the results, and then we have activities. Before going to the analysis, there are some information that you should try to collect. And this is the background information, so operational institutional environment, case history, counterpart organization, other experiences in a subsector or the sector, technical professional, state-of-the-art, best practices, what are the relevant experience, publications. So try to desk study, or perhaps because you are so much into these sectors already active, you will really have the good understanding of all of these elements that are listed here. So as I mentioned, for the logical framework preparation and the approach, you have to have analysis phase and you have to have a planning phase. Also, I shared with you here one link where you can find the EU tool or book that is called Project Cycle Management, and it really could be a useful resource for you to understand how you really approach about this logical framework approach, and what are the elements, what you have to keep in mind, and it takes you step by step in developing your idea, project idea, in accordance to the EU requirements. Analysis phase has 4 major steps. One is the stakeholder analysis, then the problem analysis, analysis of the objectives, and then analysis of your strategy. If you can recall from the instructions for the development of the concept note I shared with you in the Annex A1 and also in the evaluation criteria, there are a number of questions or the bullet points that are referring to all of these elements. Okay, so for you to be able to write about it, you have to go through the analysis, you have to understand them. So stakeholder analysis, those are individuals, group of people, institutions, or companies which could have interest in success or failure of your project. Basic assumption is that different groups have different concerns, capacities, and interests, and that need to be clearly understood and identified. In key questions you can raise whose problems or capabilities we are analyzing, and who will gain or lose and how due to our project. So stakeholder analysis, it aims to help maximize the social, economic, and institutional benefit of the project to target groups and ultimate beneficiaries, and minimize its potential negative impact. So you have to understand how different groups will be affected and how they will react to your project idea. What are the steps in defining it? You identify general development problems. So we go back again to this, your sketch from the beginning, then your understanding of the guidance for applicants, what is the specific objective you are planning to address, and so on. Then identify all those groups who have significant interest in that project, in that area, and try to investigate their respective role, different interests, relative power and capacity to participate. Then identify the extent of cooperation or conflict. You know, are they pro or are they against this? Interpret the findings of this analysis and try to translate it into the concept note. This is one of the tools that can help you. Okay, so in the first column, you list all stakeholders you identify. You try to really list their interests, and then you try to understand what is the impact of change, you know, on them and them on the change, basically how they can impact. Another tool, it is this famous matrix importance and influence, where you try, so you use the flip chart paper, you turn it into the landscape, you draw this matrix on the flip chart, and on some post-its you write the name of each of the stakeholder you identify and try to place them in the proper box. For example, you think of, okay, is one particular stakeholder has a, you know, can have a high impact on your project and a high interest, and if it is, then you place him or this stakeholder in this box. If it is high impact and low interest, then they go in this box. If they are low impact and low interest, of course they'll go here, and then the low impact and high interest, they will go here. But it is not enough only to place them. You have to understand what you can do during the preparation of the concept note and during the implementation, depending on their position. Of course, if they have a high impact and high interest, they should be either your co-applicants, or you should closely work with them. If they have the low impact and high interest, yes, you will easily create partnership with these stakeholders, but they can really not help you a lot during the implementation of your project. And this group in the quadrant C, who have a high impact and high interest and the low interest, those are the ones that you somehow have to find a way how you work with them, how do you persuade them, so they go to this quadrant B, and they become your immediate partners in the project implementation. Another tool that can also help you in analyzing stakeholder participation is this participation matrix. So in the top row, so you can say okay, type of participation with the stakeholder. Either you inform them, you consult them, you create partnership, or you try to control them. Stages in planning or stages in implementation, you try to list the different stages and try to define, and you put the name of the stakeholder in appropriate box, depending if you, for this particular planning stage, need just to inform them, consult them, create a partnership, or control them. Same goes for the implementation. So these are some of the tools that can help you to really understand and to map your stakeholders and to understand them, what you can expect from them during the project implementation, how you should engage with them, and what you have to basically work on with them in order to make them your allies throughout the project implementation and not your opponents. Okay, so the next step in the analysis is a problem analysis. And this is often regarded as a key for project planning. Again, often quite neglected. Either it is done by only one person in the organization. My advice, strong advice, would be that you engage their teammates or even engage co-applicants at the beginning of this analysis phase, so you all understand, okay, what is the problem you are addressing, but not only that you have the same understanding among yourselves. So there is the ownership between you about the future project proposal. The problem analysis assumes defining the framework and subject of the analysis, identification of problems linked to the project subject, and list of all identified problems. And there is a cause-effect hierarchy among them, and you try to illustrate this in the diagram so you understand. This is again something that you play with. So usually you can do it again either on the wall or on the flip chart paper, but you put on one post-it one problem and try to think of what is the cause-effect analysis of the different problems you identify, your co-teams, co-applicants, and so on, jointly as a team. So you start with what is the problem, and then situation that is considered as unwanted. The problem is, situation that is considered as unwanted to some people and needs. And this problem, every problem, of course, has its roots, has its tree, and the branches. And this is how you develop the problem tree analysis. You look at your initial project idea and try to identify, okay, your problem statement. So you start with the main problem here, and then list all of the problems you'll find relevant for the issue you are trying to address. As I've said, you try to establish the relationship. Is it because of this problem you have some effects, or there are some causes why something happens for your basic problem. So these are some of the questions that can guide you through this process. At the end, your problem tree should look like this. Okay, it doesn't have to be developed in this Word version. It can be only, again, organic on the flip chart and so on. But it has to be somehow the idea or the whole analysis of the problem should be clear and should be logical. And how do you test if it is logical? For example, in this particular example, the main problem is the river water quality is deteriorating. Then we see that the roots of this problem, immediate roots, are high levels of solid waste dumped into river. Most households and factories discharge wastewater directly into the river. Wastewater treated in plants does not meet environmental standards. Then you have to ask, is this logical? If you read, for example, if high levels of solid waste dumped into the river, and if most households and factories discharge wastewater directly into the river, and if wastewater treated in the plants does not meet environmental standards, then the river water quality is deteriorating. Okay, because this is an example problem tree, then it is logical. But this is how you test, logicality of your concrete problem tree that you are developing. And then also the same thing is going towards the branches. You can ask yourself, okay, if the river water quality is deteriorating, then the riverine ecosystem under serious threat, including the declining fish stock, and then there is a high incidence of waterborne diseases and illnesses, particularly among poor families and under fives. Okay, so this is how you check logicality of your problem tree. So this is the second analysis that you should go through before starting filling in the logical framework and before starting writing your concept note. Then you go to translating the problem tree into the objectives. And this continues from the problem analysis, but it assumes translation of negative situation from the problem tree into realistic positive accomplishment. For example, reduced production changes to increased production, deterioration of river water quality goes to improved quality of river water, and then also you verify hierarchy of the identified goals and objectives. There should be description of means and relationship within the objective tree. Analysis of the objectives really gives clear overview of desired future state situation, ensures that potential project goals and objectives are reached by resolving of priority problems. It really answers to questions: what the organization wants to achieve with the project, what would have to change. The most common problem for organizations when write project proposal is to mix objectives and activities. And again, how do you make sure that this does not happen to you? Our suggestion would be that the sentences defining objectives indicate direction of change. So it is either increase, improve, enable, encourage. So you use these active verbs, okay, so which give direction. So it goes, as we said, it's a continuation of the problem tree. So basically, whatever was a basic problem of your problem tree, it becomes the purpose of the project or the specific objective or the outcome. The roots are the results, and the branches, which were the effects of the problem tree, they become the overall objective. Example. Before we go to the example of one of the objective tree, so overall objective goal impact, it's a point to a situation and a status that is achieved through a long-term period and to which the project will only partly contribute. So you cannot, with your project, you cannot really solve this whole big overall objective. You can only partly contribute. Project purpose, specific objective, or the outcome is closely related to the problem, indicates status within the general environment. It must be realized immediately after the project is completed. And then the results outputs, usually it is advised to have 3 to 5 results, not more. But you know, it depends really on what is your project idea all about. They must be achieved during the project. You are responsible for achieving them. If they are achieved, and if you have really defined your problem well, and if you define your project, once you achieve the results and outputs, then the objective, the specific objective outcome will be also achieved, or the project purpose. So once completed, it really, the analysis of the objectives, it's a summary picture of the desired future situation, including the indicative means by which ends can be achieved. A simplified but robust summary of reality, okay? So it is tool to aid analysis and presentation of the idea. So please do not neglect this analysis stage as well, because it will make your concept note stronger if you go through this analysis as well. Its main strength, it keeps the analysis of potential project objective firmly based on addressing a range of clearly identified priority problems. So I strongly encourage you. And this is it is very simple as the problem tree, but the phrasing is positive. So it is from the negative, it is translated in the positive situation. But once you have all of this, even the tree of the objectives fully developed, it doesn't mean that your project will be all about this, because it can be too much. Maybe some things are beyond your control. You cannot deal as the organization. They do not fit into the result chain of the call for proposal. So then the last analysis is this analysis of strategic options. Then you look into the objective tree and examine, okay, for during this stage, which parts of the objective tree will stay in and which will go out. And then you try to apply certain criteria while doing it. So for example, technical, do you have expertise and experience of implementing all of it? Financial, what is the budget available? What are the costs for some of the elements you identified in the objective tree? Economic, how much you can really contribute to sustainability of all of it. Institutional, is it compliant with the mandate of the implementing organization, with the donor policy, and so on. Environmental, what are the environmental costs versus benefits? What is the social and fair distribution? And all of this, these are criteria. You look at your objective tree and try to assess each of the objectives you identified, especially at the level of the outputs, meaning the results, and then you decide what will go and what will stay. These are some additional guiding questions that can help you in going and assessing and doing this strategy analysis. And at the end, your strategic options, the example of how it should look like is this. For example, based on the questions and the criteria I shared with you, some of the things will be from the objective tree. You will just conclude that they should be out of this particular call for proposal. Some of the things, they will stay within the project proposal, and then this, what is at the level of the main problem, it becomes the project purpose. The first row below that are the results, and the first row above the project purpose are the overall objective. Okay, so how are we going with the time? Still okay. So once you have gone through all of these 4 stages of analysis, then you will have proper information to fill in this first column of the logical framework, which is often referred to as the intervention logic. Okay, so perhaps some of these, some of these things I have been repeating over and over again, but basically this first column, as I said, this is regarded as the intervention logic. Activities, they lead to the results outputs, then the results, they lead to the project purpose, and the project purpose to the overall objective. Okay, and then if you remember elements of the concept note and the instructions, there are some bullet points that are really ask you to describe and to give precise, concise, logical information about your intervention logic. If you have gone through all these 4 analysis stages, for you to articulate this will be much easier. You will be more confident, and your project idea will be most probably better designed. Therefore, you will be in a better position in comparison to your to other organizations, your competitors. So just one more reminder, the number of the overall objectives is often 1. So in a very rare cases, you can have more than 1. This is some practice in a project development, especially at the level of the civil society. And it shows why project is important for society. Okay, we said it's a long term. A project itself cannot achieve the overall objective. We said it can only contribute to, and our project contributes to achievement of the overall objective. Project purpose, one focused project objective, meaning sustainable benefits for the project beneficiaries, derives from the problems project aims to solve. It is solution of the key project problem. The project purpose is a consequence of achieving results of the project. All of this I've said already, but this is really to summarize again. Results outputs, the direct material results, goods and services delivered by the project. Management is directly responsible, accountable for achieving results by the project end. So whatever you put as the results, once the, if there will be a monitoring, external evaluation, then you will really be held accountable whether or not you have achieved them. And of course, activities, that tasks that need to be fulfilled in order to achieve results, identified and explained in details, especially at the level of the full proposal. It is important to pay attention to the numbering of the activities and the results. So really, so if there is a result 1 activity following the result or belonging to that result will be 1-1, 1-2, depending how many activities there are. They should suggest who will be responsible, individual, function, and organization, and how the project's goods and services will be delivered. So additional tips for you that you can, when you try defining the activities, okay, these are additional tips that can help you to sharpen your project idea, to articulate your project idea on the in the concept note format. As you can recall, most probably, the last column of the logical framework, so the first column was the intervention logic, and then the last one are the assumptions. Okay, what are the assumptions? There are external factors for which the project is not responsible, but are very important for the implementation of the activities, achievements of the results, and the project purpose. They are outside of the direct control of the project, but can influence the success of the project. If you recall, there is also one of the criteria in the evaluation form, which really asks, are the risks and assumptions clearly described in the concept note? And this is, again, why this is included here. So describes the conditions that must be secured but are beyond the control of the project, are formulated as positive states or situation, and each level needs to have necessary and sufficient conditions in order to move on to the next level of the objectives. What does this mean, each level? So at the level of the activity, you have to have assumptions that concern the activity. At the level of the output, you have to have assumptions, and the level of the outcome you have. This small chart here really helps you to, once you identify something that could be regarded as the assumption, and you ask yourself, is the assumption important? If you think yes, then would it hold true? Would it happen? Okay, so almost certain, do not include, because it's obvious it will happen. Possibly, then you include in your logical framework or the project idea. Very unlikely. So you ask yourself, is it possible to do something about it? Can you influence it? To redesign your project? And then if you say yes, then redesign your project. If it is no, then most probably the project is not feasible. For example, if the assumption is not important, then you just don't include in your project proposal. And this is how you go with the assumption. These are some of the examples. Local institutions cooperate in implementation of the planned activities. Civil servants benefiting from tuitions, return to their workplace, and so on. So this is what I try to provide you with, some of the examples that can inspire you, and you can see how it can be actually formulated. The second column is related to the verifiable indicators. And if you remember what we've been discussing about, at the level when you are defining the output, outcome, and impact, we are saying, okay, it should be in a measurable terms. So verifiable indicators are something, describe your objectives, your results in a verifiable terms. In terms of the target groups, place, and time. And they help in assessing feasibility of set objectives, set the base for the project monitoring, set the base for the evaluation system. Again, you should pay attention. There is always tendency, for example, with the with the applicants, that you go, either you define them, but they are really not relevant to the either result or the project purpose or the impact. So they are really not measuring. So you have to think, do they really measure it? Then you either provide too many of them, and you have to ask, if can we really measure them? Do we have information that we can really measure them? Because please be reminded, especially at the later stage, if you are invited to the project proposal, this is also very important, because this will be basis for your internal monitoring system, and it will be basis for the external evaluation as well. So for each result, project purpose and overall objective, following needs to be defined. So what is it that you are measuring, who, where, and when is this going to happen? Okay. They are also referred to as SMART. So they have to be specific, they have to be measurable, the information has to be available for you, they have to be relevant. This is what I've just said, that they really measure the results or the specific objective or the overall objective, and timely. So it gives the clear deadline by which this needs to happen. Okay, again, these are some of the examples that can help you and can perhaps inspire you how to define it if you do not have experience in doing so. And not the last column of the logical framework, but the last column that you should fill in within the logical framework, which is the third column, are sources of verification. And this is, you define them as the sources from which you will collect information to measure your indicators. Again, you should pay attention. Are these sources reliable? Are they sufficiently specific, accessible to you? Are there any costs associated? Because sometimes, you will say, okay, the baseline information is so and so, but you really don't have the baseline, and this means that you will have to do some baseline studies. So this is some kind of the cost related. And then in what form they are presented? Is the form that these are presented, information is presented, is the form that you can use when you are reporting against your project. Okay, so to come up with all of these information, either for the analysis, then for the logical framework, sources of verification, indicators, you have to consult some documents and sources of information. Okay, so the starting point, as Cynthiana was mentioning, it's a Bible, it's your call for proposal, public documents, reports that are available. Again, I've said it before, and just to repeat it, you can find again these maybe relevant documents that could help you in preparing your concept note in the thematic session, which you can revisit, because our colleagues from the EUD, for each sector, they have been referring you to different strategies and policies, or again, some internal databases that you may have and system in place, websites. You really do sufficient research in order to collect all information that are needed. So in this core part of this presentation, what I was trying to share with you, basically, yes, we started from the guidelines for applicant, but then I try to tell you, okay, what are the elements of the analysis? What are the steps of the analysis? What are the 4 types of the analysis you have to do? So it's a stakeholder, it's a problem analysis, objective analysis, and then strategic options analysis. Once you have that, then you can go and start developing your logical framework. For your logical framework, but the logical framework is not sufficient for your application. You have to have additional sources of information and combine with the logical framework, and only then you can really write solid concept notes. For you, again, my strong advice would be to really follow these steps I try to share with you today, because it is in your best interest. Your concept note will be of better quality. You will be more convincing. You will show to the EU and the evaluators that you really know what you are doing. You know why are you doing. You will be able to communicate it better. Okay. Building blocks, just to remind you again. So we've seen that the concept note has two main parts. First one is the description of the action. The second one is the relevance. Again, each of these have specific points that you need to take into account while writing, for example, description of the action. It goes the same with the relevance. The relevance has subheadings. Please do not erase, and please follow the instructions that are provided to you. And even after you have, you followed all of the analysis, all the steps I've shared with you, it doesn't mean that still you will be able to articulate your idea and to structure your idea in the best possible way. So I would like to use this also part of developing of the concept note to help you or give you some tips how you can structure everything that comes out from the analysis, everything that comes out from the logical framework, everything that comes out from the additional information and the documents you research. Try to structure your idea in this simple form. Okay, so the main idea, then how the introduction can look like, what are the methodologies. This is the structure of the text. Okay, before jumping into the writing, try to structure the text. It's like, you are writing any other paper. Okay, so you give a structure to it. So it has a logical order. You know what needs to be included, how it will be linked, where it goes, what goes where, and so on. Okay, and then once you have the structure, try to develop this pyramid. Okay, what will be linked to what? Okay, so this is again useful in developing of any papers, including the concept note. So it's a main idea, but then you can have some sections, main sections, subsections, and then this subsection can have a paragraph. Okay, so basically you translate this chart into this pyramid diagram. This is for developing the text, the body text of the concept note. Again, always follow the instruction provided within the concept note. Now, when you go in a paragraph writing, for most of you, this is a common sense, but I think it would not hurt repeating it. It's important in what logical order would you structure the elements of any paragraph, or basically each paragraph should have an introduction sentence, then you have the body, and you have the concluding sentence. Okay, and please try to follow this, because why are you doing this? You have to think of your reader. Okay, so you have one group of people on one side who are readers, and you on the other side. For you, everything is logical and clear, but for your reader, maybe it's not. So you really have to make sure that the ideas you have, you really try to pass to your readers in an understandable way. Okay, people who are sitting in the evaluation committee or the assessors, maybe they will not be fully aware of all details of the sectors you are present and the needs of the sector. So you have to convince them, you have to articulate, you have to pitch your idea. So when you are writing, don't only write from your point, but try to think about the reader and would it be understandable to the reader. Some final tips in persuasion, show you are on the reader's side, try to write from their point of view, describe their problem position, make clear you accept the problem, show you understand the issue, and in general, what are the best practice, the founder's perspective, that you own the experience from before, writing, and all of these additional elements I try to kind of share with you. I think that can help you really to sharpen your idea and make the concept note of the best possible quality you can. Okay, so with this, I think I try to really share with you as much as is possible in terms of how you develop your concept note. It would be ideal, for example, if we would have time to have the face-to-face session, but because of the current situation, we are not. On the other side, having this session through Zoom, it's even maybe better because we have a wider outreach. If there is a training on this specific face-to-face, then there would be definitely limitation of number of participants. And then the final part of this of my presentation is how you will be assessed. I've showed you the grid. So the relevance of the action total 20 points, design of the action is 30 points. And once you finish your concept note, please try and take some time and try to assess it either by yourself or, as Cinziana said, over the past 3 days, you can ask your friend or colleague or a trusted peer that they try to evaluate your concept note on the basis of the evaluation criteria provided in the guidelines for applicants. Some final tips. Do not wait for the last minute. Please register in Pador as soon as possible. Do not forget to submit the concept note together with the declaration by the lead applicants online via Prospect. Pay attention to all parts of the Annex A1. Examine your concept note against the checklist in Annex 1. When developing your concept note, start from the analysis and the logical framework. The elements outlined in the concept note may not be modified in full application. So this is why it is important. It can be only 20% of the initial estimation. So please, and this is why it is important for you to go through all of these analyses in order to develop your concept note. Because if you poorly develop it at this stage, first of all, your chances to pass this initial stage are lower. Plus, even if you pass, then you are stuck. And if you did not analyze properly, then whole implementation side of your project, even if you pass the project, the application evaluation, and your proposal is accepted, then you will have problems in the implementation phase. Structure your concept note against the instructions in Annex A1. Try to have it reader friendly. Think about the reader side and would he, she be able to understand and buy in what you are trying to sell to them with your concept note. And I think this is all what I have. Thank you very much. I hope this was useful. I hope I inspired you. I hope I shared with you something that can be of help. And where are we? How many participants do we have? Oh, 82, and everybody is still here. Wonderful. Great. Okay, can you still hear me? Okay. Okay, so I see also so now I think if I did not, it was not too tiring for you. I'm fully sure that I passed too many information with this presentation in a rather short period of time, and you will need some time to further digest and think about it, and maybe go back to this presentation and listen a few more times. But what I would like also to use a few more minutes now is to share with you basically some of the questions that we received during the application, and to see if we have answered them during this presentation, or are there any others that I could and should answer at the moment. Okay, so we tried to, we definitely collected all of them and we tried to sort them. And at the beginning, there were plenty of the of the questions that are really related to the concept note. So how can we fill out the form of a grant? Okay, we were not discussing the full grant application, but the concept note, and I believe that many of the elements of the presentation today answered to this question. Subtitles of application documents preparation and uploading. Again, we were not talking about the full application, but we were talking about the concept note. What we said, please keep the format of the concept note and the subtitles. Uploading it is via prospect, and there is a clear deadline. Our advice is not to wait for the last minute. Then the question was detailing priorities, requirements for the applicant and features of the application selection criteria. Again, I think even today, but also in the sessions before, we were mentioning what are the requirements, overall and sectoral, and what are the features. We were not discussing the features of the full application, but the concept note. Hopefully this session answered to. So we are talking about the description, we are talking about the relevance and all other elements. Core concept of the project proposal, more concentrated information about objectives of proposals. Okay, the objectives we try to share with you today. How do you link your proposal with the guidelines for applicants, but also how you develop your objectives and the problem tree and the objective tree and so on. How to prepare the applications documents. Again, we guided you through the process of the development of the concept note today, so I think it is clear. You have to go through all these stages of the analysis, then please develop the log frame, then go through the documents, and only then try to translate it into the concept note format. Then the question, it depends on the information we received during the session on concept note. This is only the statement. Honestly, I hope that the information we provided was really exhaustive. Not sure if there is anything else that can be said. Also, I want to remind you that we have planned 2 more sessions for the concept note during July. Please consult with the guidelines for applicants, and then perhaps in the meantime, while registering for this, you can send us additional questions that you can encounter during the development of the concept note, and we can try and to explain it further. Are there any forms for application documents? Yes, there are. Annex A1, please follow it. Is there any suggested structure of the detailed analysis of the problem to be addressed? Okay, there is no, I would say, there is no template, but I provided you some of the best ways for, to really analyze your problem. Also, please be reminded that I shared link with you with this PCM manual, where you can find more information related to all stages of analysis and development of the logical framework. It is the EU manual, so you can understand the whole process perhaps better. Risk assessment in the concept note, you've seen that yes, the evaluation is asking it. For me, we can see, or you can go through the subheadings and see where is the most logical place to fit in. But it is at the level, I would assume, at the level of the description, because then you have to understand the whole the problems that you are trying to address, and what are the risks associated to the problems. This is all what I have. Must all the co-applicants submit project through prospect or just the lead applicant? So we've said, and in the guidelines it's written, the lead applicant submits the concept note through the prospect. Okay. Any other questions? Let's see if I can understand. Can you please share with us your presentation? I mean, to make it available online. Yes, it will be shared. It will be online. Also, it is streamed live at the moment, and you will be able to revisit it on the EU Prosteer as all other sessions. Okay, each lot has a general framework. So I see some of the comments from Cynziana. I can ask her if she wants to maybe correct me if I've said something that is not in accordance with the guidelines.
No,
then we have
everything is
one
in
of the
accordance.
questions: can university be applicant or co-applicant, for instance, can be supported the cooperation of NGO and universities? Again, please refer to the guidance for applicants. This is at the level of the eligibility of partners. This was discussed in the sessions before. Today we are discussing the concept note development. Does organizations experience matter during evaluation of concept note and full application? You will see again in the guidelines for applicants what are the steps for the concept note. You will see in the Annex A1 what are the steps. You will see the elements of the evaluation criteria, what will be and how you will be assessed, and please refer to this. Okay, so yes, Cynziana, would you like to add something?
Not to add, but I was actually receiving some questions during the session. Yes, can you hear me? Okay, so since most of you can hear me, it seems, I will just go on. I mean, I was trying to answer some of your questions and I started typing since Zenka was leading the presentation. So basically the first question that I received in the chat was asking, please kindly clarify the following question: what item to the guidelines specifies the expected results for each lot, if any? So then I was making a clarification that we don't set expected results. I mean, this is up to you and the action. We set the objectives of the funding because this is our prerogative, is the funding the EU makes available. So we set the objectives. Now the solution comes with the expected results. Yeah, you say, okay, we identify the problem with this and we plan to achieve this other thing, which is your expected results. Therefore, it is up to you to define your expected results. Can I ask you about a contact person that might help us with evaluating eligibility of our project and help to answer questions that appearing during work on the application? Okay, some people are basically, so on the eligibility, we will never be able to answer. I mean, you can send in a clarification. We can refer you back to the guidelines, but you need to have your own assessment of whether you're eligible or not by looking at the criteria for eligibility in the section 2.1.1, respective to the lot where you want to apply, and pay attention to the definition of civil society that is also in section 2.1.1. So you will see that only lot 2 allows for public organizations that with a specific profile to receive this funding. And you will see that, for example, local authorities are eligible only as partners under lot 2. We cannot make an assessment unless we look at your documents, and we can only look at your documents when you submit them with your application. There is no other procedure for us to look at documents before. So you can ask general questions, but most likely you will end up making, your own assessment on whether you are eligible or not to receive your receive this funding. Eligibility of the project, I mean, we have been answering this question over and over again. I mean, you have your priorities. It's a very general framework. You have the objectives. It is up to you how you justify how your project fits and responds to what we pursue as objectives and priorities. And as long as you make a compelling argument that your project fits into the objectives of a certain lot, it is not up to us to tell you whether the priorities are eligible or not. We have a non-exhaustive list of types of actions and things that we can cover with our funding, but this is, again, it's not exhaustive, so please do not see it as a limitation. The most important is, can you justify that your project fits with the priorities of the call and of the lot. That being said, all clarifications can be sent until July 24. So you have a full month. And in fact, this is why we crowded so many information sessions so soon after the launch, so that you guys already get this information now and you do not wait until the 24th of July. However, you do have this possibility until the 24th of July to submit a written question. Please do not address random colleagues from the delegation or people that may think. You will not obtain any other information. You need to write to the functional mailbox that is in the guidelines, and I can assure you that there are people who are behind this functional mailbox, but this is basically to also streamline our activity. So to avoid frustrations on either sides and you not getting the proper information on time, please follow the instruction in the guidelines. You have this functional mailbox that I put in the chat box as well, the Delegation Ukraine Civil Society, reference the call in the subject line, and we aim to publish clarification on a rolling basis every 2-3 weeks. From our point of view, you should be getting them in time. Of course, if you submit it on July 24, you will get your clarification most likely a few days before the deadline, so you don't want to do that. You want to review these information sessions. You want to really read the guidelines. In fact, most of the questions that I'm receiving here are already answered in the guidelines. Submit clarification questions only if you have something that from your point of view is not covered. Can university be applicant or co-applicant? Same. Look at the section 2.1.1. It depends from one lot to the other. It depends on how your university is registered as a legal entity. There are countries where universities are registered as not-for-profit civil society organizations, so you may or you may not be eligible. So you need to have your own assessment, discuss also with your financial and legal colleagues, and then reach your own conclusion. Also note that the eligibility requirements apply to, there are eligibility requirements that apply to the lead applicants, co-applicants, but then you have these other forms of association. Yeah, so you may find yourself in a situation that you decide for your own that your own organization could only go as an associate, yeah, to this proposal. So do look at the forms of partnership in which you can enter. Okay, a lot of people hear me. What is the expected term of a project under the call? Stated in the guidelines, mentioned in all the information sessions, all 8 of them until now, that again are posted online. Minimum 24 months is the expected length in time of a project. Minimum 24 months, maximum 36. How many years? So may a project take? 36 months translates into 3 years. Should partner organizations be registered separately in PADOR? Also answered in previous sessions and also specified in the guidelines. We don't have a legal term for partner. There are different forms of partnerships. For co-applicants who have equal rights and obligations as the lead applicant, you need to register in PADOR. Does the organization's experience matter during evaluation of concept note and full application? I actually just answered in the chat to a question along the same lines. Some experience does matter. So, for example, criteria 1 of the concept note evaluation grid that is in the guidelines again refers to, so we will assign a score to your project management experience. So this is why you are being asked in Annex A1 to fill in your experience, because we will have to refer to that to assess project management experience. That doesn't mean that you need to have a certain number of years to have been registered before a certain date. We acknowledge that civil society in Ukraine is quite fluid, that civic groups may have been working even before being formally registered. So what is important is really your experience as a civic group, the way that you describe yourself now. So you need to list that experience, and we will assess project management based on that. Can a university be applicant or co-applicant? For instance, can be supported the cooperation of NGO and university. Again, I already answered, you need to see the eligibility criteria, and you need to look at how your university is registered, and it is only you who at this stage can make the best assessment on whether you are eligible or not. But you are free to submit a clarification request in writing to the functional mailbox, and we will make sure to answer it in writing as well. Can we cover part of the priorities listed with the lot? I'm not sure. Or we should cover all priorities to successfully pass selection process. This type of questions, you need to look at the evaluation grid. What matters for us, as Yazenka explained for 1.5 hours during this session, is, is there a justifiable and very strongly argued link between the problem that you propose and the priorities of the call? Is your solution sound? Do you show enough, technical knowledge from the way you draft your concept note to have understood the problem well enough, and to have understood your beneficiaries, well enough to answer this problem and to be the best organization to carry out the project that you propose? So basically, it's it can be one priority or it can be more. We just wanted to basically narrow it down a little bit to what we identified as having higher demand from Ukrainian civil society. So that means that we are interested in having projects in those areas. However, if you look at the priorities under I don't know, to give you an example, lot 3, independent media, yeah, and you think, okay, you wouldn't be able to work necessarily fully on investigative journalism or fully on internal governance of not-for-profit media, then you propose something in between, you would not be excluded on this basis. But it would not necessarily give you an advantage to try to address all the issues there, or to try to, so you need to prove that you come from a genuine place and that you really understand what you're talking about, and that you propose an action that makes sense. And that being said, in some cases, for example, lot 7, yeah, association agreement, we were speaking about this in the dedicated information session. In that case, if you cover more policy sectors, that may give you an advantage, right? Because it shows that you cover more aspects of the implementation and monitoring of the association agreement. So that doesn't mean that you need to address everything that we have put in the call, but it needs to make sense in the context of the law. Please tell me, can the Bar Association be a partner when submitting an application? I think that there is a reference to the Bar Association even in the types of actions that are described under lot. 5 related to rule of law. I believe I don't want to make a mistake with the number of the lot, but the funding dedicated to rule of law, justice reform even has a reference to the Bar Association. I do not know what is the legal registration of the Bar Association, but same, you know, with as with universities, you know, it depends on what is the legal form of the Bar Association and in which type of partnership, you know, you can enter. If you know, if you would propose them as co-applicants or as associates, or basically just as a target group. Yes, so all of those are possibilities, but you need to look into this technical legal details, preferably before you submit your concept note. I already answered in the chat as well. Is it worthwhile for new NGOs to apply? Yes, it is. I mean, if you think, you need to read the evaluation grid. Yeah, you will see the points that refer to experience. So basically, as I said, when we assess financial and operational capacity, we have this first criteria that says, do the applicants and if applicable, their affiliated entities have sufficient in-house experience of project management. So this is one. And actually the only criteria that refers to the actual experience of your organization. So the rest of the criteria refer to experience in implementation of the action and, you know, understanding of the context in which you propose the action. So yes, it is worthwhile also for newly registered organizations to apply. You may have an issue with financial sustainability there. So you need to see for what type of, you know, depending on the size of the grant that you are pursuing and which lot you're applying for, you also need to think of whether your cash flow and, you know, the budget that you have been managing until now is really, you know, able to sustain the amount of funding that you will be requesting from the EU. Difference in rights and obligations of the co-applicants and affiliated entities. I'm not sure I can present it any better than the guidelines, so please do consult the definition of and the rights and obligations of co-applicants and affiliated entities. And I think that the best is for you to read the guidelines, because there are many little things and all of them matter. So lot 6 is not, it's probably, lot 6, I'm not sure what I was speaking about when someone responded possibly with lot 6. Okay, so basically I'm done with the questions on my side. I think Zenka still does not hear me, but basically, just to conclude this very intense week, all of these presentations will be posted online or are already posted online. We are happy if you review them, read the guidelines. I cannot really stress this enough. I mean, basically all the questions I received here in the chat are answered in the guidelines already. So, but at the same time, as I said, we are open to receiving and addressing your clarification requests. Use the functional mailbox indicated, and we hope to yes, I'm receiving another question that is also answered in the guidelines, referring to supporting documents, if you need to translate them. So sooner or later we will ask you for unofficial translations of the documents that are uploaded in Pador. Normally this happens when just before we would sign a contract. So if you are successful through all the stages of the selection procedure, then at the end, when we check your eligibility, we will need to look and carefully analyze all the documents you submitted in Pador, and for that we will need and for that we will need unofficial translations. Please do not invest in this at this stage already. So at this stage, it is sufficient if you upload the documents as you have them, just scans of the originals. If you do reach the point of selection and being awarded a grant, then you will need to start preparing unofficial translations of your registration documents, audit reports, and whatever this may be. Another question, can an organization that's currently implementing another EU-funded project be eligible for this grant? Yes, again, I mean, what's not stated in the evaluation grid will not be evaluated. Yeah, so you have the eligibility for the organization and the evaluation grid for the concept note. That's it. This is what we look at, nothing else. So yes, if you have an ongoing grant, you will be considered just like any other applicant. That being said, of course, it is very interesting for us to also diversify the types of organizations that we engage with. This is why we allow for newly registered organizations to also apply for this funding. This is why we encourage a wider, let's say, broader spectrum of types of civil society organizations to also pursue our funding or engage in policy dialogue with us. Yes, and on that, these are the last two questions. Again, thank you very much for having attended very patiently this longer session than the previous ones. Send us your written clarifications. Do sign up for the upcoming trainings. We will have another session, thematic information session on July 2nd that most likely will be streamed on the UProSteer website, but we will inform everyone today or tomorrow about that. And of course, the two remaining concept note trainings, hopefully in the idea that as you progress through the work on your concept note, you will start, having some of these concepts that we discussed today being sank in a bit and getting a little bit more meaning, especially for those of you for whom it is the first time that you're doing this. So you will probably have a different understanding or a different outlook on, drafting certain sections of your concept note. So I do encourage you to sign up early on for those two remaining trainings. And I wish you all good luck with starting your concept note drafting. And a good weekend to all. Goodbye.